Hello again and happy Thursday, friends. Kirsten here, your decision coach for the episode. And today we are wrapping up our series on cognitive biases and tendencies. I hope you've enjoyed getting a little sneak peek at these workshops that we have in the Decision Masters program. When I work with people one on one or in a group program, they get access to this whole library of workshops. And I've said this before, I think of it as instructions on how to operate the heavy machinery that is ourselves. It's just bananas how complicated our human bodies and brains and emotions and stress reactions are. And if you too feel like you've been undereducated in how this crazy machinery works, I got you. I hear you. I see you. I'm with you. And that's what these workshops are here to serve. Not because we're lacking and messing everything up, but because there's an opportunity to understand yourself better and feel more intentional, self-directed, and self-compassionate, because we can hold ourselves to some high standards. I don't know if you know this about yourself, but we can think we're supposed to wake up perfect every day and then mark ourselves off for every moment of imperfection. And you know what? By bedtime, it's not a pretty report card. So I hope you've not only heard a lot of useful information in this series where you get to make decisions with a little bit more awareness of, oh, you know what? I am biased towards loss aversion. Let me just double check my thinking here. I also hope you've heard a lot that gives you permission to give yourself grace for being imperfect on paper, but actually perfect in how humans are supposed to function. So, to prep you for the final snippet of the workshop, we're going to talk about perspective taking and delayed gratification. Ooh la la. So, perspective taking, what you're going to hear is why we have the tendency to misunderstand what other people mean, and people tend to misunderstand what we mean. You're going to hear about meaning inference. You're going to hear about egocentric bias. And you're also going to hear why the society you come from influences what bias you are prone to when it comes to how you perceive other people. And then we're going to talk about delayed gratification. This is something that comes up, from time to time in our decision coaching. People often look at their own behavior and they think, why? If X is the rational, logical, obvious choice, why did I choose Y? And why would I again? And it turns out it makes sense. So you're going to hear about self-control and what standards you should be holding yourself to in this department. You're going to hear a reminder about how humans are wired to respond to uncertainty and the effect that psychological distancing has on our decision making. So as always, I hope you hear exactly what you need to hear today, and you take this with you into your week to observe your thinking and your decisions, not from a place of judgment, but with a little more understanding and maybe a tiny bit more intentionality. Let's dive in. Okay, perspective taking. This is the tendency to misunderstand others and be misunderstood. Huge cognitive bias is that we assume people will know our meaning, and we assume we're going to be good at inferring other people's meanings. And it's just not as true as we think it is. The study they did with text messaging was having people predict how easily will other people infer your sarcasm and how good will you be at inferring other people's sarcasm. Everyone thought, it'll be easy for other people, it'll be easy for me. And it was not. Less than half the time, they were correct. Less than half the time in text messaging. That was text messaging specific. Now, in spoken word, the interesting study they did was gathering a group of people that included strangers and longtime spouses or friends. So you could either be talking to a total stranger or someone you've been married to for like 14 years. And again, they asked, how easy will it be for other people to understand you? And there was a phrase they were instructed to say that you had to apply the meaning to. So I don't want to see you right now. That could be taken a lot of ways. So they said, okay, your job is to add this meaning layer on top of it. Either you're angry or you're busy or you're happily distracted with something. How confident are you that this other person is going to be able to infer your meaning? And everyone was confident, strangers, married people, whatever. And it was 50-50. Even with spoken word, with intonation, you could hear people, even with the people that they were married, but it didn't make a difference if they were strangers, married, or longtime friends. It was just 50-50 if people got it right or not. Good to know so that we don't overestimate ourselves or others when it comes to meaning. And this egocentric bias, we perceive things in the light of what we already know. So it's easy for us to think other people will see the situation similarly. This is why so much of the conversations that are had in an election year are wastes of time because people are just shouting about how wrong other people are because they don't see things the way that they see them. But it's coming from this egocentric bias that, well, because I see it this way, it's normal to assume everyone else sees it this way. And then there's just an interesting note here about individualistic and collectivist societies. So we live in an individualistic society. Other societies that are collectivist societies are ones in which people are regularly reminded of their responsibilities and duties to the larger group. There's a sense of belonging that is inculcated into their everyday life and values. And therefore, their bias is to be constantly aware of what others are thinking and doing. And so it's just interesting to notice that societally, we are encouraged to have this particular bias that we do, which is thinking about ourselves and not being constantly aware of other people. Oops, this still says negativity bias. It should say perspective taking. Might be a little obvious, but it's worth saying. What do we do to get around this perspective taking conundrum that we can run into? Understand others can see the world differently, have different feelings than you, and stop trying to read minds. Stop making assumptions so much of the time. So the final thing, delayed gratification, I think this is our last one. We tend to irrationally discount the values of future outcomes and rewards. And it applies to positive outcomes and negative outcomes. This is why people undersave for retirement. It's why we can put off prioritizing our health. It's also why we can avoid hard things like moving across the country or considering a career change or building a nonprofit from the ground up that sounds really hard because we can discount the future value of the rewards we're creating. So, why did this happen? Lack of self control. It's really just humanly hard to resist immediate temptation by design. So, just more permission to give ourselves credit. Also, I love this phrase that she had in the book, havoc of uncertainty. It's hard to think through uncertainty. We will always prefer certainty over uncertainty because of the way that our brain is designed to react to uncertainty. It's unsafe, it's vulnerable, we're in danger. So, immediate gratification is always going to be more biologically attractive than delayed gratification because delayed gratification involves the future, which is uncertain. We can't think through all of those things that we don't know. If the thing is right here and it's immediate, that's certain. Also, just giving ourselves a little grace around this for, oh, yeah, obviously, I'm going to prefer the certainty of what I can see and what I can know right now. And knowing that preference is also going to influence your choices. And then the psychological distance. The future feels distant. A little bit of why we overfill our schedules is because of temporal distancing. We think, yeah, I can do that. I can see you in the morning on Saturday and then wrap up this work thing in the afternoon, and then go out to the other side of town for their going away party. And that's going to be a great Saturday. It's easy to do that when that Saturday is 4 months from now because it's like, "Oh, what a fun Saturday I'm gonna have." And then you get there and you're like, "What the why did I think I was the person who wanted to do more than one thing in a day? Like, who planned this?" But it's easy to underestimate the costs, the time and the resource energy costs of faraway commitments. It's the same thing with rewards. The future feels distant. That's fuzzy. Not gonna put a lot of specificity around it in my mind. The great news is that excessive self-control is not the answer. And they've studied it. They're like, well, if lack of self-control means you're not good at delayed gratification, should you just be as controlled as possible? And the answer is no. It's not effective for being better at delayed gratification and happier. It showed poor performance on difficult tasks because when you are
hyper self-controlled, your aspiration is perfection and you are incapable of that, which just sets off this chain reaction of events that results in disappointment. The answer, which you are all super good at already, is building a strong relationship with your future self. So your present self is less likely to misunderstand and devalue their needs and desires. We did it.
Hey, want to find out your decision style? Obviously, go take the decision style quiz. It's in the show notes and at kirstenparker.com/quiz. We all have our style when it comes to making decisions, but do you know how to use your default way of thinking to your advantage? Or do you mainly get stuck in the most annoying parts of overthinking and people pleasing? The decision style quiz has your answers, my friend. Take it right now at kirstenparker.com/quiz.